This session is very much interesting in a sense because we are going to talk about financial responsibility in gaming. Why this topic is important in a sense that today gaming, we talk about like addictions, financial losses gamers are suffering. So in that sense, let's hear it from what the companies who are actually performing these, who are actually letting gamers play a lot of games, how they are thinking about the financial responsibility in gaming. I'll start with you, Abhishek, first. So at First Games, obviously, you have this app wherein a lot of apps wherein you talk about the self-assessment tips and self-exclusion. Can you bit guide on what are steps you take when it comes to responsible gaming? What are you doing presently in terms of ensuring that users don't step up away and they basically stick to the guns what being provided to them?
So for us, I would say, and for most of the players in the industry, the self-regulation, let's say, in a certain way, starts from the time the user comes to the platform to ensure that the user is a legit user, the user is over a certain age, also coming from a state where the laws are abided, and so that a user doesn't come from a state where, let's say, an X game or Y game is not allowed. Then, depending upon the player, we would allow the user to play small, first of all. So there are limits on the tables that are available for the user, the amount that the user can, let's say, add to the platform and play for it. Then from there, depending upon the user's gameplay, there are certain limits which get unlocked depending upon different verifications that the user would do, the amount of money that the user can add, the games or tables at which the user can play. Plus, at the same point of time, there are certain checks and balances in place where we would flag users for, let's say, for example, if I'm a user who plays a 2 rupee game, and if I all of a sudden start playing 100 rupee games and I've played, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5, and I'm not doing fairly well. So there would be alerts sent out, the tables would be locked for the users, there would be somebody from the team reaching out. At the same point of time, we keep on guiding the users in terms of the best practices, how to play in the right way as a source of entertainment. That is the most important part. Then we also provide users an option to take a temporary hiatus from the gameplay activity. So the users have that option within the app. And once the users take that self-regulating period, take that hiatus, and they've set, let's say, and they can set at least 7 days is the minimum that we ask the users to take. And we allow the users to basically just forgo their accounts for the next 365 days. So once this is done, the user would not be able to play any cash games on the platform, no matter how much the user would come to us. And the only option for the user is to withdraw the funds. So the funds are readily available. It's not like the funds are blocked. So I would say from the word go till the last stage, there are different checks and balances that we've placed. And till date, they've worked well for us. Hopefully, we want to continue doing that as an industry, as a company as well. And that's about it, I would say.
Yeah.
Gaurav, yes.
Thank you, Jatin. So just to add to what Abhishek said, I think it all starts about responsible gaming. It all starts with educating the customer, educating the user about what kind of self-exclusion and responsible gaming options are available. Basically, how we do it is through short interactive videos where we educate the customer about what kind of self-exclusions are available. Ideally, like he said, there is a self-exclusion which is in terms of number of days, number of weeks, or number of months where a person can self-exclude, and obviously then he's locked out. He cannot play a game, cash game. He can obviously interact with the free rolls and other stuff which are available, but ideally not the cash games. Then we also have some things like reducing the limits, reducing the limits. If I feel that I should reduce my deposit limits, I can reduce my deposit limits. It's a self-exclusion tool. And also the third is restricting myself from stakes, like he said. So it could be forced and it could be optional also. If I decide not to play on higher stakes, I can lock myself out of those stakes for a certain period of time and only see the lower stakes which are available. So that's how the whole responsible gaming per se works.
When we talk about forced exclusion, though these are self in a way self-assessment kind of a thing, But when we talk about forced regulations, how companies are doing this generally, maybe if you have any data in sense, which you can share in terms of how much alerts, at what financial loss you send an alert to a user, and how many of such alerts is being followed by after the first alert. So if you can give maybe an industry perspective, or not talking specifically to your company, but generally how that should be or how much that is being done presently.
So I would say there are multi-level alerts that are being set. So usually it works on a 3-level mode for most of the companies. So, and again, the levels are also defined in terms of different activities. So let's say when a new user would come in, the kind of tables like we were talking about, the user would see. So these are forced exclusions for the user, that, okay, even if let's say I'm somebody who feels that, okay, I can play a real money game and I'm an ace in it, but just because I'm coming on a platform for the first time, the platform doesn't know if, let's say, an Abhishek or Jatin or Gaurav is an ace player. So first of all, we limit forcefully to a certain set of tables. Once you play those games, we see that, okay, there are certain set of skills that you have developed, then only we would allow you to go ahead. Plus, there are deposit limits, which are a single transaction limit, a daily limit, a monthly limit, which are forced on the user. So even if you want to add more than that, let's say, for example, a new user who's coming in an ideal scenario, I would not allow, if I talk about a random number right now, more than, let's say, 5K or 10K in a single go. And that too would be higher, on the higher side. Most of the users, I would say 99% of the users would do lower than 1000 or 1000 rupee transactions. And a majority, 50% users, let's say for games such as, let's say, Rummy, Fantasy, would do a 100 rupee or sub 100 rupee transaction when they start. Secondly, depending upon the gameplay behavior, the games that the user is playing, we would limit not just the tables, but the amount of time that you can, let's say, for example, play on a certain game. At the same point of time, we would take actions when we would lock out the accounts and we would refund you the money to your source account if we feel that, okay, you're somebody who has been playing a lot. And because end of the day, see, gaming is a lot more like stock market, like we were talking about earlier, right? I've put in a lot of money. A lot of times I take a stop loss. A lot of times I try to play on the bear as well, not just the bull, right? That, okay, I'll take a certain stock. It has gone from 20 to 18. I would go like, okay, let me buy more. Then it goes down to 12. Let me buy more. So what we do, unlike the stock market, is on a player level, we would identify these patterns and we would basically just caution the user that, okay, first of all, there'll be an email, a notification, an in-app message saying that, hey, are you fine? Are you okay? We've seen that, okay, there's an anomaly in the gameplay behavior. Secondly, there would be somebody from the team reaching out to the user. The user also has an option to call a number directly, where the user can talk about anything. There would be information, education that would be given to the user. The team would reach out, and basically only once we are convinced through proofs, through the user's mental state, etc., we would allow the user to play games. And the same thing goes on, let's say, for deposits, withdrawals, or any activity that the user does. So literally we have checks and balance in every nook and corner of the app to ensure that, okay, we are not motivating users to just go on a free flow and just wager whatever amount they want, but to actually control it. Because for us, the most important part is that this should be a stable economy for anyone and everyone, where people are able to enjoy it as entertainment and then make some money, or at least have that opportunity of making money at the sides, and not basically go ahead and basically lose everything that they have.
I think beautifully said, Abhishek. Long-term sustainability of players rather than short-term profit is what the gaming companies look at. And I think first we spoke about the self-exclusion, and now we're talking about forced exclusion. Yes, so in addition to what Abhishek said, there are algorithms which are written in the software itself which track deposit patterns, the source of deposit, the source which a person is using, whether it's UPI or credit card or bank accounts, the amount of money which a player is depositing, the amount of money which a player is losing, the user's profile, how old is the user in the system, what is the age bracket the user comes from, are all the flags which are created in the system mostly by all gaming companies. And then they trigger certain aspects. It could be categorization of users into 3 categories, 4 categories, where category at the top would be allowed to have more leverage over changing limits or increasing their gameplay. But as you slip down the ladder, there are forced exclusions which would come, like reducing limits or shutting the player out, and that's how the whole system works on the forced exclusion part.
But to get a sense, if you have any data to back on, like how many alerts you have sent to the users, or how many users have crossed those limits. Generally, if you have how you track this, like maybe.
I'll tell you. So I was just doing a quick analysis of this last month only. Out of my total monthly active user base, 5% of them were triggered for emails. So 5% of that user base was sent emails. And emails are basically telling them that you have crossed certain boundaries. We don't define the boundaries, but we say you've crossed certain boundaries which are under responsible gaming. And then it talks about what all responsible gaming includes, how you can set your own limits, how you can exclude yourself from various things. And these emails are sent 4 times on a periodicity of 1 day each. So within a week, a person's mailbox will be triggered with 4 emails, forcing that person to read it. Also, how these emails have an impact. So 5% of the user base was bombarded by these emails. And what we saw in return was 4% of them actually either reduce the limit or reduce the kind of stakes which they were playing on, or excluded themselves for a certain period of time. So that is the kind of impact it had, at least in our case. Abhishek, you can elaborate a bit more.
So it's a similar number for us as well. It usually varies between 3 to 7% depending upon game to game and season to season as well. Because let's say there are games such as, let's say, fantasy, which are seasonal as well. So at that point of time, there would be certain set of users who would come in. For us, basically, we rely more within the app, first of all, because emails as a channel is something that we do not use too much. So our idea is that, okay, when the user is on the app, at that point of time, you show him clear, depictive images, videos, and forcing the user to go through that entire program. That, okay, it's more like that in any corporate, you would be forced to do a few trainings without which you cannot basically work or access your email accounts. It's similar to that. The user needs to go through those, let's say, 10-minute videos, take those quizzes, and basically then be forced to basically take certain actions. We would not say that, okay, you need to lower down your limit, but post that we would basically just tell the user, hey, this is your limit. Do you want to adjust? In most of the scenarios, I would say somewhere around 70% of the users do make those adjustments. And the users who do not make adjustments, there is I would say, visible difference in the way they play. A lot of times users do come back and say that, okay, hey, I thought that, okay, this is a season. I could have won, let's say, for example, fantasy, because it is very seasonal. People would come in and basically play on India days. So that basically varies the entire percentage. But otherwise, we've seen a great response to it. The users actually come ahead and they laud us for this effort, because a lot of times the users are not even aware that they've gone overboard, and it also helps them track the monetary flow of funds, etc. as well.
So we got a clarity upon, right, how companies are doing these and having these self checks, or maybe helping the gamers to actually see how they're crossing. If they're crossing any thresholds, like they'll have an alert. But Gaurav, I wanted to come to you in sense that, at the end of the day, we are running a business, right? We understand the challenges of the industry. We have 28% GSTs there, right? Already burdened. So how you think, do you think like where in a scenario, these companies will be in a way to do a moral policing in a sense right way? Or do you think like we are just talking about in numbers and it doesn't make any sense?
No, it does make a lot of sense, Jatin. See, it is, like I said earlier, short-term profit compared to my reputation in the industry. If I'm seen as a responsible player, a responsible platform, then obviously I have to look at long-term sustainability of my players. Just to make a quick buck, I can't go wrong. So in terms of policing, I would say it's a wrong word to use. I think it's a joint responsibility. The users who we have on our system or on our platform are all adults. They're all 18 plus. So it's a joint responsibility between us and the users. So our job is to educate them, tell them about the features, tell them where they're going slightly overboard or largely overboard, and it's for them to act upon it and correct that. Now, obviously, like I said, in extreme cases, there are forced exclusions, but in most cases, it is what we prompt the user or push the user towards a self exclusion of any sort, whether it means reducing the time, reducing the deposits, or reducing or locking himself out. I think that's what is more important. Yes, it is a joint responsibility, like I said, and that's what we always count on.
Abhishek, what do you think? Like, because we are answerable to investors in a sense, right? And in a way, burden of GST is there. Going forward, the industry is not going to grow at a percentage which it has been growing in last 3 years. So, do you think like if we'll have some checks, this will in a way limit our revenue sort of thing, right? How you look at it?
So let me put it in a way that let's say we go out on the roads, there are traffic limits, there are red lights, there are speed bumps at the same point of time. All of us would have been happy to drive our cars at like 100, 200, the top speeds which are available. But just for the public protection, just to ensure that, okay, the wheels are running on the road and then there's enough safety for everybody out there, there are these restrictions that have been placed. So we look at these restrictions in a similar way. Obviously, things like GST, etc., have put an additional burden on the companies like us and the entire industry. But I would say that is something which I actually laud when it comes to this industry, that they've taken it, but they've, despite all these challenges coming in, they've not gone back towards all these self-regulation, all these basically activities where we're educating the user, because that is the most important part. And as Gaurav mentioned, it's about not about the short-term buck for us. It's about the long-term advantages, the long-term revenue, let's say, because an investor would not be happy if you show him a valuation, like we've seen the valuation bubble burst right now. A lot of people made money around the valuation bubble, and now everybody is in a distressed position. So a sustainable business model is much better than a short-lived revenue or valuation. And the users also actually appreciate it. So companies like ours, we have not absorbed the entire GST burden. And despite that, the users are coming to our platform. Obviously, the revenues have reduced, but then the users are still appreciating the fact that, okay, you're providing us with a platform that helps us grow, that helps us control the gameplay, the limits. Otherwise, there are a lot of companies offering them 100% GST cashback.
On one hand, we are talking about how these companies are taking so much steps in protecting the users. On the other hand, we usually see advertisements on television or maybe on YouTube and other platforms saying you can play and win this much of an amount. We have celebrities, walking the road and they are just on their mobile phones, just playing the games. They don't know what is happening, around them. So in that scenario, do you think like we are in a way saying, okay, we are, with the users or with the customers, but on the other hand, we are showing these kind of things to the people. In a way, don't you think so that hampers or maybe the whole objective of what we are trying to do it here?
So I think we had some sessions before lunch also on advertisement, and the ASCII code is something which has come up. It was there earlier, and then there was an amendment in 2022, which clearly talks about what kind of disclaimers need to be made and what kind of ads you need to stay away from. But mostly, Jatin, if you would have noticed, the Indian platforms are not going overboard with advertisements. It's the foreign offshore guys who are just bombarding the market by saying anything and everything just to get customers on their platform. And that is an illegal business. And that's why the government is trying to put restrictions through IB ministry, through ASCII guidelines. I think that's where the problem lies. Now let's talk about celebrities. Now celebrities have been endorsing products for time immemorial. I don't know. So So if you look at it, the oldest ad you would remember would have a celebrity featuring and talking about any product, whether it's a washing powder or a soap or any product which we use on a daily basis. Now, how much of that you quantify within the ad and what kind of information you're conveying to the consumer is what is guided by the principles of Advertising Standard Council of India. And I'm happy to say that they've been working well. We have got mails where we have claimed certain things, and we've got a mail saying either you explain or take your ad down. And we have done that in the past, but over a period of time, if you see, everybody has gone towards responsible advertising. Like 3 years back, the ads only featured Aao Paisa Jeeto. But that has changed now. People are saying Aao skill dikhao, play it for entertainment. You know, those are the messages which are coming out. So I think that's the change which I'm seeing.
Abhishek, do you think those messages need to be say out loud in a sense that whenever suppose okay, so we see the app, even app also has these advertisements therein. Do you think like we need to tell them people out? And even if Gaurav mentioned about the disclaimers, those disclaimers are just run for seconds after the whole ad is shown. Disclaimers are just for seconds. Do you think we need to change the way we advertise despite the government's regulation and everything?
I would say the answer is not a simple yes and no, because end of the day, all of us want to run the right ads. All of us want to do the right things. At the same point of time, what happens, like Gaurav was mentioning, right, about the offshore guys. So we would run an ad, we would give the disclaimers, we would say the right things. And then at the same point of time, there would be a few, I would say, players who are not running a legit business. They would hire 12 celebrities and run an ad in the same space. So what happens is our advertisements, the right ads that we are also doing, get camouflaged with them. A lot of times we've heard people talking about our brand or different brands with their, let's say, brand name as well. So when something like this happens, our ability to limit ourselves and to basically control the entire narrative also goes for a toss at the same point of time. In terms of disclaimers, can they be better? Can they be, let's say, a running disclaimer throughout the ad? We are ready to do it. The only thing is we need that support as well. We need the ASCII to basically, and last time when ASCII actually came to us, we were very reciprocative of the fact that, okay, hey, we'll do whatever you say, whatever is in the right interest of the consumer and whatever needs to be called out. And our disclaimers, if you look at it today, right, they're actually bigger and for a more visible on the screen than mutual funds that we've been seeing all our life. And I believe all of us remember mutual funds are subjected to market risk.
Okay, Gaurav, one pattern I have observed while looking at the comments in the Play Store section, plus talking to a few of my friends who've been into gaming, who've lost money, obviously. So the common thing is, after losing money, what people say is that we were playing with the bots. There was no fair play. These companies are not indulged into fair play. How you address these things? Because these are your gamers, these are your market. How you address these things? Yeah.
So, Jatin, all gaming companies at some point of time have been accused by the users of saying that I lost because either your RNG is not working properly or you don't have an RNG or you have bots on your system. Now, how I address that is very simple. RNG is certified by an international lab. So obviously there is a credibility which goes behind it and anybody can come and audit that at any point of time. In fact, we put the RNG certificate on the website itself so people can download, go on to the International Gaming Laboratories website and check whether we got certified from them or not. On the bots side, we have a no bots policy, very strictly adhered to internally. There are audits periodically which happen on our system, which also make sure that these kind of things are not coming in. And also the user generated bots. There are times when users can use bots or artificial intelligence to play, or we call that assistive technology to play. We try and block that also by looking at the response time of the users, the crawlers which they may use to do that. And thirdly, a very important tool called Shield, which actually prevents collusion. We get to know by capturing the device information and the proximity in which the two devices are playing to actually come to a conclusion that there is a collusion between the players, and we actually lock them out. So there are things which are going on this front. Technology is obviously evolving, ever evolving. So we are on top of it right now.
Are you seeing bots being played on your platforms? And
So thankfully, I can say that okay, there are no bots on our platform. So that was one of the first things that we did once we started getting into this business was we wanted to create a safe platform, a safe space for users to play. Because end of the day, what happens is if I would allow a bot to play, for example, or I would have my own bots, again the same thing, the long term or the short term vision, right? I would make some money tomorrow, and we are the companies, by the way, who have been battling for regulation. We are the companies who have been battling with different agencies, organizations. Please audit us, please regulate us. If any company was running bots, we would have been basically behind bars, and basically we would never be able to run our businesses. So that's the main point, that okay, any company that is, let's say, rooting for regulations which wants to get audited will never run bots, because this is the first thing that anybody will find. There are KYC, there are audits, there are gameplay patterns, limits as well. Users have frustration, they reach out to the customer support as well, which is all documented. So that's all over there. And there are different, let's say, softwares, RNGs that all of us use to ensure. Some are inbuilt, some are, let's say, taken from different companies which are at the epitome of these technologies as well. I believe most of us have iTech Lab certification, which is again, because in India there's no agency which is basically appointed as the RNG certifier. We've gone with what the UKGC had basically approved. So iTech Labs, let's say in this scenario, and a few others have been approved by the UK Gambling Commission. So because there was nothing over here, we went with the best thing which was available in the market. So from our end, we've gone ahead and we've done everything that was possible to control, and we'll continue to do that. Obviously, as a user, a lot of times when we win or when we lose, and it's a generic policy, right? So when you would score good marks, you would be like, okay, that I worked very hard. When you do not score good marks, when the questions are basically something that you do not understand, you would say, yeah, this kid goes to the teacher for tuitions and that's why he scored well. So that's the basic policy as well. And again, I would go back to the offshore example. There are these guys who are fly-by-night operators, who start a website, run a business, and in a week, 10 days, a month, or maybe a few months, they would change the entire platform, the domain itself. So those are the players who are not paying taxes, not running a legit platform, don't care about the user safety or the industry in any which ways. And they are the ones who are doing a lot of these things, and they call themselves gaming platforms as well. None of them are listed in India, registered in India, operate from different countries. And over there, obviously there would be bots. I cannot comment, I do not play over there. But that's the business model, right? You play versus a system rather than another human being. At our end, we can proudly say that, okay, the person that you are playing against or with, or whoever is playing on the platform, is a genuine person. And there are steps taken to ensure that.
But in a sense, I agree, like, about the fair play, what the companies are doing. Anything, this common pattern, in a sense that people lose lakhs and then they realize, okay, we were addicted to certain games. The company should do something. Company should have blocked us there, and then they realize it after. Talking about the regulations, obviously the government is working on a lot of other things. I think the Consumer Affairs Ministry is doing something. Plus MeitY obviously will have something soon. How you think the regulation should be, and to adding to that, how much a company should be responsible for this? First, the regulations overall, how much what the government should do, plus what should be the responsibility of companies. Though you are doing a lot of other things, but on top of that. Yeah.
So I think this has to be split into multiple parts. One is the financial standing and a person's ability to spend money, right? I look at it more like an entertainment rather than a winning source or a losing source. Playing a game is not winning or losing money, it's about entertainment. Now, if the government tomorrow says that you should be responsible So am I going to get the balance sheet or income tax return of a user beforehand to decide what should be the limits? It's not possible. So this onus has to go back on the user on how much I can afford, in terms of entertainment. I can only educate the user and raise flags at certain points of time. Uh, I'll give Abhishek the mic first and then come back to my second part.
So similar to what Gaurav was talking about, for the way I talk about regulation, right? Especially when that we're talking about the financial aspect, it's pretty similar to how you look at the stock market. As a consumer, I can go ahead, I can spend lakhs. At the same point of time, I might just invest 1,000 or a few thousand bucks over there as well. The platform doesn't have any idea what kind of disposable income I have or I do not have. There is no central regulator who can tell me that, let's say, for example, in a lot of things, there's a CIBIL score as well. But we do not get that at the same point of time. There is no regulation or no government organization, I would say, because private ones nobody would trust, again, just like RNG, that could tell me that, okay, hey, this is a user who should, because like we were talking outside, $1,000 for Jatin, Gaurav, and Abhishek would be completely different than another person over here. For Jatin, that might be money that you will spend on a drink maybe at somewhere. For Gaurav, it might be something that he would not even think about. For Abhishek, it might be basically a money that he is not even aware about. But somebody else over there, for him, $1,000 might be his daily earning or maybe a week's earning. So because we do not have that information, it is pretty difficult. On the regulation side, obviously, because there is a central body involved, our idea would be to ensure that, okay, there is a regulation rather than no regulation. B, to have it in a light touch manner so that the government is also able to understand what this sector is all about. Because the most easiest step to do is to regulate something is to make it so tough for anybody to operate in that sector that the sector gets killed. So that is basically my 2 cents, that, okay, it should be light touch, allow the government to study the data, to understand how it goes. And plus, in terms of the financial aspect, it is again back to the user and the companies and the government. It always has to be a 3-party model. It cannot be that the company is only responsible. We, as a company, we can be held liable if we are not educating the user. If you're telling me that, okay, you need to educate the user, you need to show them the videos, etc., force them to look at them, that is something that we'll do from our side. But it cannot be that, okay, just because Abhishek went ahead and lost $1,000, it is the company's responsibility. End of the day, it's Abhishek's responsibility as well. It's his money, it's his choice. And Abhishek would not like if somebody tells him that, okay, you cannot spend $1,000 without a justified reason.
And the second part of this is addiction, right? So I think a lot of the things which we see within technology which has come up, whether it's social media or OTT platforms or gaming apps, in some sense they are addictive, okay? Now, how do you control addiction? I think that's where the government could step in with the help of the companies and the federations which we have to run de-addiction centers, and it could be for everything. I'm saying, why single out only the gaming companies or only the OTT platforms or only the social media apps? It could be a complete digital detox de-addiction centers, which the government, with the help of the companies themselves, could probably run that. And it could come up in, say, to start with 4 in different parts of the country, and then moving on to every state or moving on to every large districts of the country. It's a problem which is all pervasive, Yeah.
We can go to the audience for any questions if you have. Yes, please.
Thank you for your inputs and comments. I don't know your name, the man sitting in the center, but
Gaurav, yeah.
I liked, or in fact, I like the sarcasm, or maybe I want to be sarcastic about what you said in the end, that they have to have de-addiction detox centers. why don't you write to Smriti Irani and maybe the government should do something about it?
No,
It's very
actually-
sarcastic on your part. You're making enough money, and on top of that, you're saying there should be de-addiction centers to detox people, not to use what you're already selling.
No, I'll tell you why I said this. What I meant by that was when the industry and the federation would come together with the government will bring in the force and we will bring in the money. And the first such de-addiction center is already coming up in Karnataka with the help of the Karnataka government. So I think that's where the government is required, just to bring in that element of discipline.
Just to add to that, what Gaurav was meaning to say was that, okay, there needs to be a central center, let's say the de-addiction center. Because what would happen is a lot of us companies have partnered with different agencies, different companies who assist the users even today. But the problem is that because there are different organizations who are running it, every organization would run a different program itself. So the main idea is that with regulations, if there can be one particular organization that can have a fixed program that actually runs in the same way for every company, every user who's coming in, we're happy to chip in, we're happy to put the money, but then at least we would know that, okay, it's going in the right direction. We are doing that even today. The only thing is if it can be centrally combined and basically put it in the right channels, the right manner, and the users know that, okay, this is just one number that I need to call. I don't need to look at basically 20 different links and be like, okay, which one of them is a scam number and which one of them is actually a genuine number.
And just to add, most of the gaming companies currently have psychologists on their boards, and we call it, by different names. There are times when the players get flagged and their accounts are locked out, they are referred to the psychologist. And unless they do a session, a couple of sessions, 2 sessions is a therapy module right now, the 2 sessions, and the psychologist reports that it's all fine and the person is, fit to play. And then only the account gets opened again.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Abhishek. So in conclusion, very simple. Obviously, we talked about the regulations and what companies are doing to help the users, don't fall into addiction and other things. But at the end of the day, it's the user's responsibility mostly, and we must play responsibly. Thank you.